There have been a lot of big changes to the Elder Scrolls Online this year, and we just got another big piece of news from ZOS developers. So in this video, I'm going to go over everything that they just announced about ESO's class identity refresh. Yes, that's right. We're going to be getting lots of updates for classes, so make sure you watch the entire video so you know all the details about what's been released, the plan, including when a Q&A is scheduled, so you can learn even more about what ZOS is going to be doing to classes. As always, if you subscribe to my channel and hit the like button, it helps me keep making videos just like this. So hit that subscribe button and let's dive in. Well, it's no secret that this year has been full of changes for the Elder Scrolls Online. We got our first look at the new season's content pass, and a lot of people have mixed feelings about it. Although I did enjoy a lot of the content this year, I'm interested to see how this is going to unfold next year and to future years as well. And on top of that, we just got news from a developer deep dive post on the website. And of course, I'll link the article in the description if you want to read more there. But we are getting an ESO class identity refresh. If you remember earlier this fall, there was a survey that went out about ESO's classes, including pain points, overall impressions on class identity, and just really an opportunity to say what you like and don't like about the classes, the look, feel, balance of combat. And they took this feedback and they are going to be making some changes based on that. They were very transparent about what they are doing. So I'm excited to see that this is a continuation of the transparency that we got from the apology about the Writhing Wall event. I think this is a really good look for ZOS and the new director and people in different positions. So I'm hoping we keep getting this trend of them being honest and upfront and actually listening to player feedback. Let's get into some more detail here. They have some design philosophy concepts about what is class identity as a whole, because thinking about Skyrim, thinking about Oblivion, there isn't really too much of a class identity. In Oblivion, more so, you do have to lock in what you would like your skill set to be, but you can basically pick up weapons, especially in Skyrim, be an archer, be stealthy, and then decide to go sword and shield and just wail on your enemies instead. There really isn't a locked in sense of ability identity in those games. But in the Elder Scrolls Online, and as is typical with MMOs, there are class identities way more similar to traditional D&D, where a lot of these stem from. So you have to fit in the framework of those skills and class abilities. So what does this mean for ZOS? What does class identity mean to them? Class identity is what makes a class unique and different from other classes. This covers everything from a part of who they are, what they can do, how they look, what they excel at, and what they don't excel at. So when they look at class identity, they have two core pillars to support that experience: source of power and power fantasy, which I think is really funny, but I love this term, power fantasy. So what do they mean by source of power? They're referring to what the lore relevant origin of a class's power is, and what might differentiate them from a normal citizen of Tamriel. So essentially your background or what inspired you to be the character you are. And what do they mean by power fantasy? Well, this takes the source of power a step further and influences how a character receives and is then able to use their power. Do they have area of effect? Is it damage over time, direct damage, etc.? By taking their source of power and putting it into a delivery mechanism, we aim to create the sensation of what it would feel like to be that class. So this differences help set ESO classes apart from one another in terms of their identity. It's why some classes have specific power delivery mechanisms that others do not, thus contributing to a more distinct play style and establishing a stronger class identity mix. So right off the bat, I really like these descriptions. I think it's giving a sense of strong class identity that we don't really have in the other Elder Scrolls game, and is typical to an MMO. So I'm glad to see that they are embracing the class styles and letting us know where the inspiration comes from. I think that really helps put into perspective why they might be making some of these changes. Next, they go on to say, while it's always important to have a class's vision and goals in mind, it's just as important to ensure that they hold up after the community adapts to new tools and features. As new systems and improvements are introduced, development becomes an ongoing process that requires continual refining. So, of course, they are talking about subclassing here, and they go on to say one of the biggest pieces of community feedback that we're looking into is how subclassing interacts with class identity and game balance. Subclassing at its core directly competes with our established version of class identity and instead puts that agency into your hands, giving you the ability to create anything you want. While this is a deeply important part of the feature for us, It also currently comes with some drawbacks for balance. As it stands, subclassing is objectively stronger than pure classing by a large margin for several reasons. This is mostly caused by the vast differences in individual skill line design. ESO was not built from launch with subclassing in mind, and the system highlighted issues with the current class skill line design that were not previously a factor, but are untenable going forward. So again, I love that they called this out and essentially acknowledged the feedback that a lot of people want to play pure classes still, and while subclassing is a really cool addition to the game, it isn't balanced. And they own that and are essentially saying, we're going to fix it. So love the honesty, love the transparency. This post so far is really good in my opinion. They continue on to say, to support the overall health of the game and class system, we need to respond and adapt to how the game has changed based on how the players are using the subclassing feature. So with this in mind, they have a clear picture based on the feedback of the scope of changes that need to be made. These insights have led us to re-examine our class identities, how they're expressed, how they're designed from individual abilities and passives, where those are sourced, and how they all come together to create a cohesive class and identity. One overarching pattern you'll see as we move forward improving this experience is reorganizing class skill lines, adding in more benefits for sticking with the core lines of your class, and decentralizing role-specific power, so that a single skill line won't have every tool you need to achieve your goals. Now, for everyone who is raising the alarm saying, oh my gosh, they're going to nerf everything, they did point this out that their aim isn't necessarily to nerf though. While in some instances nerfs may be necessary to achieve the overall class identity goal, we'll be using values and specific effects to create more powerful or punchy abilities and passives, but with greater nuances that prevent subclassing from completely dominating the meta. So ultimately what they aim to achieve is twofold. For those who prefer to play a pure class, you should have a strong and satisfying class identity and the power you need to achieve your goals. For those who wish to dive into subclassing and have the freedom to forge your own identity, maybe forego that identity for the sake of a specialized power, but with less of a difference in power compared to the pure class options. So essentially, they say they want you to have that creativity, they want you to be able to play around with different subclassing options. But if you want to play a pure Dragon Knight, you can play a pure Dragon Knight and you will still be able to use that in content. It won't be the meta to have to subclass, which is great. I think the largest piece of feedback from the subclassing system is it takes away from the original classing and having that sole class identity, which I think in an MMO is important to have. And while it's nice to be able to change it with subclassing, I think there's something important about being able to keep that identity. What is their long-term vision? ESO has evolved tremendously over the last decade, and as new system and classes have been introduced, the bars or the play experience with our design philosophy have been raised. So as part of this project, we have established a holistic long-term plan for how we aim to modernize ESO classes and bring them more in line with one another. It extends beyond addressing identity, balance, or look and feel in isolation, and it aims to address multiple class issues. While many of the items in the list below have always been what we strive to accomplish, and that isn't changing, we will be spending more time strengthening ESO's classes and focusing on these guiding principles. So they have 3 points to their long-term vision. The first is that every class will be viable in any role. Class viability means players can reach their goals with the choices offered. This does not necessarily mean equally optimal for every situation, but always providing multiple choices for you. So I take this to mean that every class should still be able to DPS, tank, heal, but you might have certain specific situations where something might be more optimal than the other. For example, the Necro Res is really clutch in settings where your group might be having trouble staying alive versus maybe having Magma Shell in your tank instead to keep them alive so that the group stays alive. So I think basically they're saying we don't want classes to be categorized by healer, to be just a DPS. They want it to be multifaceted in that sense still. Secondly, we want each class to feel cohesive and true to its power fantasy with abilities, animations, and audio effects that reinforce its core identity. This means refreshing and modernizing abilities so they look and feel as impactful as those of more recently introduced classes like the Arcanist. This is amazing. Even though it's just cosmetic, I think the Arcanist has some of the best sound effects, some of the best visuals in terms of its abilities. And I would love to see some of those original classes get this update. I think it could make it feel way more special to be a Nightblade and have some more sneaky, maybe some more cutting edge effects on your abilities. Even something like the Necromancer that came out more recently than the original classes, I would love to see them update it, maybe add some of the cooler sound effects that the Arcanist got. I think that was one of the best parts about the Arcanist was the visuals and the sound effects, so I'm so excited to hear that the Warden, the Dragon Knight, the Templar, every class is going to be revisited and have that extra special touch to boost them up and make you feel good about which class you picked. And thirdly and lastly, we're committed to evolving our design philosophies by using player feedback and in-game data to help guide class updates. As we address balance concerns and update class mechanics, our goal is to ensure that every class feels good to play, both mechanically and thematically, while keeping the unique flavor that sets each apart. So I really like this. I think this means hopefully similar to the Vengeance campaign that they have tested out this year. They're going to be rolling out changes with classes. They're going to be testing them on the PTS and getting feedback as they go to tweak and change, and hopefully with an end result of new classes that the majority of people really like. So they go on to give their goals as well. So for this refresh of ESO's classes, our primary goals that support the long-term vision we laid out are strengthen the unique identities of each class, making them feel fun and rewarding, as well as thematically unique and engaging to play. Improve the balance between pure classing and subclassing so both paths have their place in the game. Make sure each class skill line's more varied and distinct for what they offer a role so that each skill line holds something valuable regardless of what you play. Use both in-game data and player feedback to help inform our decisions, ensuring changes reflect player experiences and preferences, and address power outliers and abilities and skill lines, and look at balance concerns as we progress through each of the classes, prioritizing mathematical and functional changes before visual and audio updates. Again, I think this sounds about as good as we could hope for. They're going to be looking at the functional changes before the aesthetics, but they are also doing the aesthetics, which they didn't really have to do, but I'm glad that they are. And they're addressing this big concern of players where subclassing and pure classing have such a varying difference. So this is really good news to me. They've also included a new graphic where they lay out the unique high-level identities they envision for each of these classes and how they would be translated into gameplay experience. This is just so cool to me. If this is the future of what it's going to look like when you log in and try to choose your class when you're creating your character, I mean, visually, this is already so stunning. And I love that we are getting their source of power and their power fantasy so that it's the same across the board. I think this is a lot clearer and a lot more character based. So you can really understand the background of your character and why they have their powers and start to create your own character out of that. So I really love this infographic. I think it's not only pretty, but that's the tone for each of the characters and their classes. So in terms of rollout for this major comprehensive initiative, it's going to be spanning several updates. They're going to be prioritizing classes that require the most modernization and balance work first. So for some classes, this will be an exercise in refinement. For others, it will mean a more thorough reconfiguring and probably reconstruction of the class. For some classes, it could be a mix of both. They're going to be starting with the Dragon Knight, then the Warden, Sorcerer, Templar, Nightblade, Necromancer, and then Archimist, which makes sense because Arcanist is the newest. Each class will be addressed one at a time and receive impactful mechanical and balance changes in addition to any needed updates to visuals and audio. They're starting with the Dragon Knight class as the anchor, given its foundational role and extent of changes needed. These class-by-class updates will run alongside ongoing support for the game, and timelines may shift as needed. So I'm not exactly sure how that would work. I would more initially picture this as being like the Vengeance campaign, where they release some changes for the Dragon Knight, but don't actually incorporate that into the game. So it could create some power balancing issues if the Dragon Knight and Warden get released before the Sorcerer and Templar. So I am curious to see how they expect that to happen and how they're going to roll that out, or if maybe it will be more like the Vengeance campaign where they test several of the classes, starting with the Dragon Knight, of course, but then ultimately don't release those until they're all ready to go and an update further down the line. To complement this change, they said they're going to continue working on regular bug fixing and performance updates as normal, and their goal is to keep the relative level of power players have now, and they will work to maintain that within the reason moving forward. So hopefully that means it will just balance out the classes as they come out, and we won't have to change our build to a different class every time they make an update. While we won't focus on large balance changes outside of ability line refreshes and subclassing balance, they will continue to monitor feedback and adjust values for balance on other aspects of gameplay as needed. They're currently looking into ways to alleviate some of the longstanding community concerns with both pure classing and subclassing in the short term, as well as underlying broader issues and feedback. And they even go so far as to give an example with the Dragon Knight and how they would like to start making some of these changes, meaning that the Dragon Knight refresh is already underway. So, in terms of refinement, Dragon Knights are attrition warriors. There will be many adjustments that help reforge this experience, including unique damage over time parameters like shorter durations, higher damage per tick, and ramping effects that will let them build their power over the course of a fight. Another area this is improved is with the new Avalanche passive at Earthen Heart, which allows you to slowly build up momentum with a stacking damage bonus while in combat that can be lost if you fail to keep up the pressure. And in terms of reconfiguring, Dragon Knight flames are ravenous and demand fuel. The Dragon Knights are designed to require careful resource management, creating the feeling that their flame always needs fuel. This also helps balance the class, preventing them from dominating long battles simply by outlasting their opponents. While we still believe in this design philosophy, we've also tried to build more satisfying methods of solving those problems inside their class kit, like reworked Inhale, which has moved to Ardent Flame and now briefly restores a percent of your missing resources over time before unleashing its classic explosion. So I don't play a Dragon Knight too often, so I can't really tell right off the bat if this is going to be good or bad, but to me it sounds like it is fitting more within that identity of the class. But I'm curious what Dragon Knight mains may think, so let me know in the comments below. And in terms of ongoing planning overall, they are going to be hosting a live Q&A on Thursday, December 4th at 2:30 p.m. Eastern to answer community questions. And they'll also release an FAQ documentation afterwards. I think this is going to be really good. If you have concerns, if you have questions, this is going to be a really good way to ask them. So definitely make sure you tune in. Or if you can't, you can always put your questions in the comments below and I'd be happy to ask them for you. So just let me know. That's all I have for you guys in this video. I'm overall really excited for this. I think this could be a very welcome change to the game and fixing potentially one of the biggest issues that we saw this year with the release of subclassing. I'm really excited that they're being so transparent, that they are being honest, and that they are doing these surveys and actually looking at the data and listening to them. Let me know what you think in the comments below about this upcoming change. Are you excited? Are you uninstalling the game as we speak? At a minimum, I'm optimistic and I'm excited to see some more information on this on the 4th and in the new year to come. I'd like to give a shout out to my members. Thank you so much for supporting my channel. I really appreciate the extra support. And to anyone who has subscribed to my channel or liked the video, thank you so much. Every little bit helps. I'm also going to be going live on Saturdays. You can find me on YouTube and Twitch. Thanks again for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.